All right. Oops. Oh, we're good. All right. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get going. Can everybody hear me when I'm speaking like this? Am I loud enough? Somebody in the back of the room. Can you guys hear me? Yes? OK, fantastic. I'm going to go ahead and get rolling then. So this is my yearly project update. This is really more of a conversation than a presentation. There's no technical stuff in here at all, other than some cool charts. So yeah, I'm going to try to leave as much time for questions at the end. Please save them up. And if there's anything that occurs to you while I'm giving this presentation that you perhaps want to see discussed in more detail, maybe not just by me, but by our other two officers, Jonathan and Martin, please write down the next cards, which I have some more of here. And we can discuss it tonight in the panel. Oh, and I did realize I forgot to give all of you the Wi-Fi password because I am awesome. I think a lot of you figured it out. It is GRCon17. There's two Wi-Fi networks, the Bahia Resort or Guest. You can use that one if you're staying here. You can also use Bahia Conference. It's GRC, all caps, ON 2017. All right, so this is the chart I always start with. It is the traffic to our website. Over the last month, this is not, it doesn't really give you an idea of what things look like over the year, but compared year after year after year, it does give you some idea of what kind of interest we're getting. So this logs traffic to our primary website, our wiki page, and the code that is actually stored. Actually, who here is aware that we have a repository that the canonical repository is not GitHub? Not many people. Yeah. So especially as a free software project, our canonical repository is not on GitHub. It is actually stored at git.gunradio.org. I think it's still accessible via website. If not, it is through the Git protocol. But this logs traffic to that, not necessarily clones. So last year, we were getting closer to 60,000 unique visitors per month to our web infrastructure. This year, we're up to about 70. And you can clearly see where the weekends are in this chart over the last month. So just to give you some idea of the kind of interest that we're seeing. Generally, the countries that we see the most traffic from, United States by far and away is number one. We actually kind of think that China is number two, but China does not show up in any of the charts. It's like it doesn't exist. We're pretty sure China's number two. Russia is, actually Germany's number three. Russia's number four, and 5 is UK. Is the UK. India is in the top 10, but I think India's number 7. India's number 7. So we once again participated in our Summer of Code programs. So the two big ones that we do are Google Summer of Code and ESA SOCUS. It stands for Summer of Code in Space. So I think everyone here is familiar with GSOC. So this year, our two GSOC projects were GR Boca GUI. So for those of you who aren't familiar, Boca is it's a web framework that it's like a data-based web framework that lets you create web charts and stream data in real time and that kind of thing. So what it lets you do actually from GRC is create a flow graph that then effectively exports a web front end, so you can control and view your flow graph through a website, just through GRC, which is really cool. There's a poster about that in the expo starting tomorrow. Our other one is a project about DAB and DAB+, digital audio broadcasting system, also very cool work. And so they're the two GSOC projects. Our ESA project is C++ code generation from GRC. It is finally happening. After many years, the European Space Agency has decided to pay for it because we clearly were never going to get to it. So we're really, really excited about that. There will also be a poster about that in the expo starting tomorrow. OK, this is my slide to rant at all of you for just a second. So I was actually going to call out Will. Where's Will? Will, I know you're in here. Will Myrick. Yeah, there's Will. All right, so I was going to give you a hard time for buying your ticket yesterday morning at 10 a.m. I was like, all right, come on, Will. You're even one of our speakers. Like, yeah. All right, so raise your hand if you, as of this morning, had not yet registered. Come on, put your hands up. Put your hands up. Okay. Yeah, so you guys make this so hard to plan. This is so hard to plan. This is the month of September. I was supposed to have food and beverage contracts finalized last month. We've gotten more than 70 registrations in the last 10 days. Yeah, anyways, we have another year of great growth. There's going to be more than 320 people here this year, which including the attrition, i.e. people who didn't show up last year, it looks like we're going to grow by about 40 to 50. We do need to start the discussion about this year. So this Friday afternoon's workshop sessions, we're going to decide which workshops to do based on interest. So like Philip, we'll send out a survey. If you're interested in embedded stuff, you can say I want to talk about embedded. If you're interested in licensing, you can say you want to do that. If you're interested in GRCon17, you can say you want to do that. And we'll try to spread it out so that everyone gets to go to what they want to go to. And the purpose of that is to do breakouts and discuss how to get things done. One of those will be GRCon18. And the reason we are here in San Diego this year is because so many of you last year said that you wanted to be here. So here we are. Other cool stuff that happened this year. Rotom Schwartz engineering competition. Actually, can I get a show of hands people who actually know this happened? Does anybody know about this? Edis research table doesn't count. Edis, half of you are from Germany. OK, so this is really, really cool. So Rotom Schwartz has been running a yearly engineering competition for 14 years, I think. GNU Radio is older than that, so we got a couple years on them. But so they run a yearly engineering competition for students. And they chose to do it this year with GNU Radio. Specifically, they created a challenge for students to optimize the DVB-T2 capability of GNU Radio, and when they are done, upstream it back into the project. And they did this as actually kind of a test about whether or not they wanted to start adopting not only GNU Radio more heavily within Rotom Schwartz, but open source software generally. It was tremendously successful. We've had several follow-up conversations with them since then. They had a huge amount of participation. Now, of course, all three winning teams were from Germany. In fact, the first two teams were both from Karlsruhe. Can I get a show of hands for Karlsruhe graduates that are in the room? Yeah, OK. How about Aachen? We have any Aachen students in the room? No? OK. But one of the teams that was there was Oregon Tech. And Yves Klopp, Professor Yves Klopp, who unfortunately couldn't make it this year, has been doing GNU Radio work at Oregon Tech for a while now. So it's very cool. We're really, really excited to see. And they did this on their own, actually. They decided they were going to use GNU Radio. They designed the entire competition. And then they emailed the GNU Radio list and said, hey, we're doing this, without ever talking to us. But it was really cool. So one of the things I want to talk about, not just during this talk, but also over the course of the week, are changes that we're seeing within the GNU Radio community and kind of the way that the project gets developed. So if we rewind to maybe not 2001 when the project was founded, but say mid-2000s, close to 2010, even just 5 or 6 years ago maybe, tremendous amount of the development that was happening within the community was focused in the core of the project. Everyone was working on the stuff that gets distributed when you apt-get install GNU Radio, right? Everyone was working on the runtime and the scheduler and GRC and GR digital and GR analog and our, the packet-based modem stuff, all that kind of stuff. Everyone was working on that. What we've seen in the last year, maybe year and a half, is that everyone is kind of moving away from the core of the project, and everyone is building out of tree modules. And when talking to people about this, it seems like GNU Radio basically kind of hit the point where it's like, OK, it can do everything it needs to do now. We're not really held up by the runtime anymore. So exactly. I'm actually going to talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, so everyone is leaving the runtime alone. It does what they need it to do, and everyone's building out-of-tree modules. And there's been some really, really cool out-of-tree modules, actually. Developments that, I mean, if the same number of man-hours were spent in the GNU Radio core itself, we could have replaced the scheduler. We've had incredible work that's happened in the last year. Just as some examples, I don't think unfortunately Daniel Estevez wasn't able to make it this year. I was trying to get him to come, but he had a conflict. Can I get I love audience surveys, in case you couldn't tell. I'm going to show of hands who's familiar with Outernet. OK, not that many. So Outernet is a survey. Their goal basically is to provide internet access to rural areas or hard-to-reach places, right? So you see here I have a picture of a CubeSat. They're actually not using CubeSats right now. They're using MRSat. But basically, they're providing internet access, and they wanted to do it through open source as much as possible, but they needed a business model. So the way they make money is the hardware is open source. The drivers to use the hardware are open source. The comms receiver is not open source. So Daniel Estevez used GNU Radio to crack the satellite downlink and then the uplink, and then proved that it worked by demodulating the web page. Apparently, they're serving Amazon, which is an interesting website to serve to rural areas. And then wrote a blog post about how he did it on GNU Radio with a complete walkthrough. Like, these are the symbols. This is how I knew I was, I had done my clock recovery properly. This is how I knew when I was getting symbols. This is how I fixed the coding. And this is all part of his work in GR Satellites, where he's also implemented support for LilexSat. So incredible, incredible work. Radio astronomy also have amazing things happening. I think most of you have heard of Hilburn at this point. We've had great stuff happening in RAO, who actually just ran a workshop last month teaching high school teachers how to teach using GNU Radio. Unfortunately, Professor Richard Prestige was also not able to make it this week. We have the Open Source Radio Telescope Project, the Canadian Center for Experimental Radio Astronomy. This is actually Marcus Leach's project. His goal is to make one of these giant dishes used for radio astronomy available to everyone like us. And it's GNU Radio based. So really, really cool stuff happening. And then, of course, this kind of thing doesn't even require out-of-tree module anymore. It's just, where's Nate? Nate Temple. I think he's sitting outside, just casually tweeting about receiving NOAA satellite imagery using GNU Radio. So we have a tremendous amount of stuff happening, just none of it's happening in the core project. And the number of out-of-tree modules over the last year has exploded. And they're no longer, it used to be that many of the out-of-tree modules are relatively simple things, like they just have a couple of blocks or two. Now it's full communication systems, full satellite receivers, full direction finding frameworks, the DVB systems. It's pretty incredible. Oh, actually, one of my complaints here is that all of you that are developing out-of-tree modules, you're not putting them on CGRAN, so nobody else can find them. Please come talk to me if you want to know how to put them on CGRAN. But yeah, so this is one of the things I want to talk about a little bit this week, is kind of the shift of developers that we're seeing. Cybersecurity is well, obviously, as everyone knows, is exploding. And GNU Radio is a big part of that. We have Mark and Matt. Are you guys in here right now? There's Matt. I don't know if Mark is. So we have Matt and Mark giving a presentation today about cybersecurity work that they're doing. We're running a hacking challenge through the week of the conference again. Michelle Thompson will be talking about that shortly. GNU Radio shows up all the time in crazy places. And again, I never hear about it until I see it in stuff like this, where the Daily Mail decided or posted this thing about how you can steal a car using a hack RF and GNU Radio. Now, if these Daily Mail writers actually not only got GNU Radio installed, but then stole a car with it, I don't know why they're working at the Daily Mail. So this is their picture of the shady figure with a hack RF. This is in the news article, in the picture of this hacker software, GNU Radio. I mean, it's the Daily Mail, so you can't take it too seriously. But then stuff like this happens, I don't hear about it until I see it on YouTube. This is a class that's run, a cybersecurity class that was run at ShmooCon. They're teaching people cybersecurity with GNU Radio by shocking each other with dog collars. Yeah. It's not illegal, as long as I think you get consent. But yeah, I mean, this kind of stuff happened. At this point, it used to be the GNU Radio community was, I don't think, in terms of like cathedral and bazaar, you know, I don't know that cathedral is the right word for it, but the community was a lot more centralized. We always knew what was happening, and now it's just not the case. It's huge. There's many, many tens of thousands. We don't really know how many. We think based on traffic and Git clones that were in the high tens of thousands, maybe low hundreds. But stuff is happening all the time. The community is enormous, and at this point, there's forks of it and branches of it, and things are happening, and we have no idea. This is another really cool example. So the Navy ran a hacking challenge. This was put together by the director of cyber warfare at the Naval Postgraduate School, and called it Hack the Machine. And the purpose here was, they set up effectively a fake ship. And by a fake ship, I mean they put together, like mimicked a naval vessel's comm systems and said, hack it. And then they invited all these teams to Austin for this big event and said, hack it. Well, the winning team used GNU Radio. They actually did something, Jonathan, so this is one of the times where we were given a heads up that this was happening, but only a few weeks ahead of time after they had put many, many months of effort into planning this. So they did get in touch with us to let us know. We were able to send Jonathan. Jonathan went, and the winning team, using GNU Radio, hacked the ship. They actually went through, I think, an 802.11 base network that they found on the ship, broke it, compromised the rest of the system, and then ghosted these fake ships on their radar screen. That spells pwn. All of GNU Radio. And they're actually running a follow-up to this. And I had absolutely no idea how he got permission to do this, but of hacking actual Navy equipment, like taking delivery from vendors and then having, comms engineers sitting there and then try to break into them. So it's pretty cool. Other major things. So you finally do not only have to talk about Bitcoin while you're drinking beers at GRCon. You can talk about it all the time. So Blockstream, who employs about half of the core Bitcoin development team, has created the Blockstream satellite network, which basically allows you to connect to the Bitcoin blockchain from anywhere using a satellite link. And their satellite link is built with GNU Radio. So we see, and once again, we had no idea that this was happening until actually Jonathan, who happens to also be a Bitcoin core developer, got a heads up about it before it went live, but none of us knew that it was under development. So the upside of all this is we have a huge level of community activity, right? All kinds of stuff happening all the time. Just real briefly, I just went through some examples: cybersecurity, radio astronomy, satellite stuff. But things in education are really exploding. Comms development, commercial development. One of my great frustrations is I not irregularly tour labs built to use GNU radios at commercial companies' R&D locations, but they don't publicly talk about their use of GNU radio. And so it just is in all kinds of places that you would necessarily expect. The downside of all this is our core is suffering from the lack of attention. The GNU Radio project is 16 years old now. Now, 16 years ago, it was forked from MIT's pSpectra project, and that code was all thrown away. It was great code, sorry, from anybody. MIT CSAIL is here, I think. Great code, but it was rewritten, but still, that runtime is, it's old. It needs maintenance, it needs help, and there's other parts of GNU Radio that need attention. And everyone is right now focusing on everything around it. So this is one of the things that I want to kind of talk about in more detail this week and figure out, how do we keep the project itself moving when so much of the exciting development is now happening by using the project, which is kind of an interesting problem to have. So this conference, especially when we first started in 2011, and there were 40 of us crammed into a room at UPenn, really everyone was there just to talk about GNU Radio. At this point, the community, not just GRCon, but the community has really expanded way past that. So as an example, like as a normal part of your workflow, can I get a show of hands for MATLAB users or Octave? MATLAB and Octave users. OK, quarter of the audience. How about LabVIEW? All right. This grid, oops, I have a touch screen, apparently. All right, this grid is Liquid DSP. Any Liquid DSP users? Some, yeah? How about XMidas? You don't have to admit to that, by the way. RedHawk? Yeah? All right, OpenCPI? OK. And more, GNU Radio is not just sort of being used with these workflows, but it's a part of it. The four major ways of using GNU Radio is a standalone. It's one part of your workflow, right? So for example, you build an algorithm in MATLAB, you export it to C, you put it in a GNU Radio block, you prototype it, and then you deploy it with GNU Radio, or you stick it in something else and do it. You pair it with other tools. So by pairing with other tools, we actually have several talks here at GRCon about using GNU Radio with RedHawk. Thomas and Patrick are here from GN to talk about that, about using GNU Radio with OpenCPI. Or as just a dependency. Sometimes you don't even know you're using GNU Radio. So actually, InSpectrum used to use GNU Radio. It now uses Liquid DSP. GQRX, I'm sure many of you are familiar with GQRX. That uses GNU Radio under the hood. Shiny SDR uses GNU Radio under the hood. So at this point, GNU Radio, even if you're not using it, it's become sort of this common denominator between all these communities, which is really, really cool to see. And it's also really, really good, I think, for the project. We get a lot of I really don't think there's such a thing as a GNU Radio purists anymore. There kind of used to be. It was a little bit of a religious battle. But I think it's over, and it's gone, and I think it's good. Everyone is using the tool that's best for the job, which arguably is what you should be doing. And as a community and a project, we're getting a lot more outside perspective. We're getting more contributions. And people are doing really, really cool stuff with it, and things that perhaps we as a community wouldn't have been able to do on our own. So I'm really, really excited about the way the community is broadening. And I think that's something you're going to see here at the conference. And I think that's just going to keep growing. So our major challenges here are, how do we support sustainable development for the GNU Radio's core? So many, many millions of dollars are spent each year building GNU Radio flow graphs or applications or out-of-tree projects. I've toured multi-million-dollar labs built to use GNU Radio. But how do we actually divert some resources or spend resources or get people to invest in the core of the project? Code quality and stability is still an issue for us. It's not, if you build an application and it's running and you're going to go give a demo the next day, I would never tell anybody to ever update their software, right? And that's bad, right? I shouldn't have to say that, right? You should never say updating your software breaks your application. That's bad. But we have that problem. And again, and this is kind of the parental problem, right? The barrier to entry. How do we make this thing more accessible? I know this is something that Robin cares a lot about. Robin Getz at ADI. He talked about it a little bit last year. SDR is hard, right? It's like if you wanted to out of the box, you want to be a GNU Radio user. Okay, learn Linux. You need some C++, you need some Python, some nominal knowledge of comms, probably some RF. If you want to use it with hardware, you probably need to know how the hardware works a little bit. It's a huge, huge array of fields that you really have to be able to use. And so, the problem that we've always had, right, is you have an algorithms expert who wants to use GNU Radio, but they don't know how to. You say, okay, no problem. You're having trouble apt-getting something. Build it from source. And they're like, what source code, right? And from the complete opposite side, people designing antennas who have never touched software before, and they want to use GNU Radio to instrument their antenna, and they've never heard of Linux. So I mean, those are kind of the extremes, but you have the same problems in the center, right? And even somebody, myself, for example, who's been part of the project for a long time, there are parts of GNU Radio that I do not feel comfortable touching because I don't think I have the requisite knowledge to do it. And that's not necessarily unexpected in a project as large as GNU Radio, but it's a demonstration, or it's an indicator of just the breadth of the project and the fields of expertise that it encompasses. All right, so this is my parting thought before I open this for questions. We're really, I think GNU Radio is in a really interesting point. We're primed to really explode. More and more people are adopting it. The community is growing in ways that we don't even understand. And I think it's really gonna blow up if it gets the support it needs. If it doesn't get the support it needs, basically I think what I'm saying, I think we're at an inflection point. Either we rock it or we've hit P1dB. And I think it's up to us to figure out which way we go. I would like to see it explode, but we're going to have to figure out how to get through our challenges. So my goals, at least when Jonathan and I talk, and Martin, and we talk about, okay, what is it that we want to do, or we're talking about a major investment in a feature that's going to take many man-months of work, or GSOC projects, anything that reflects an investment of resources. These are the goals that I have for the project. And pretty much everything that happens can fit into this in some way. Now, everyone can kind of, I realize that like mission statements and goal statements and that sort of thing can kind of get a bad rap, but realistically, if you're going to marshal an organization towards a common endpoint, you have to have uniting goals. These are mine. This is what I would like to see happen for the project. Everything that happens in the project, I think fits, or that I think is worth doing, fits well into these. If you disagree, please let me know. That might make a good panel question. And that's it. So with that, I have 5 minutes for questions. So I'm going to start taking questions if Jose wants to run the mic. And at the same time, I'd like to get Manuel mic'd with your lavalier. And are you using your laptop? OK, fantastic. All right, so with that, I'm happy to take questions from anybody who has them. What's up, Drell?
Hey, how you doing? You talked about the fact that there's a lot of out-of-tree module development and the fact that we want people to add those modules to CGRAN.
Yeah.
Would it be possible to enhance CGRAN to have a rating and reviews feature?
Wow, that's an interesting idea, especially since the GitHub stars feature is so worthless. I would love that. I think that would be really, really cool. Actually, this is one of the reasons the GSOC project for GR Broca GUI is so cool. One of our huge weaknesses as a community is everyone who is interested in, what's up? Sure. Yeah, that's Martin, one of our community manager and one of our 3 officers. So one of the major challenges we've always had as a project is pretty much everyone in this room is a communications engineer, a radio engineer, SD, or whatever, some way related to radio, right? And so most of the people that we have that are engaged in the project, contributing, writing code, taking part in leadership, are in some way related to signals or comms, right? We have no idea how to write a website. Cannot write a website. We have no, 20 years ago, I wrote a website. Now I look at the JavaScript frameworks on these things. There's like 4 dozen in a single website. I have no idea what I'm doing. And for the most part, neither do the rest of the core contributors when it comes to web infrastructure. So yes, that sounds like a fantastic idea. The hard part is going to be, who here knows JavaScript? Yeah, and but that's one of the things I want to talk about, right? That's one of the problems I want to solve. All right, Martin.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to that. So the rating feature on Cgran was like the number one. Like, we had the idea of Cgran. The next thing was like someone said, "Can we rate them and then sort them?" And like we need help with that. Like we don't seem to have any problems finding people who can write DSP code. We get a lot of contributions. Like if there's something wrong in our clock synchronizer code, someone will fix it. Websites, wikis, like writing documentation is always like crickets when we ask for help. But that's also something I feel like that is easy to spend a little of time on. So if you say, like, I can, yeah, like next week, don't worry, I'll help you all next week. After that, I don't know, but all of next week, I'll be able to help you. If you have that kind of commitment, like, please approach us. Like, we have plenty of little tasks that need help where we can like insert someone who has a little bit of web experience for even short periods of time, and they would all go a long way into improving our website, Cgran, PyBombs, like all those ancillary tools that we build that are completely unrelated to radio, but are really, really useful to make the community successful. So we definitely need help with that, and we can make you useful even if you don't have a lot of time. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's crazy, right? It's like, hack a Navy ship? Sure. Build a website? All right, I think we have a few more minutes left before manual's up. We have another question? What's up, Moritz?
Yeah, I don't know, maybe it's better for the panel, but I'm going to ask anyway. So.
Okay, what's up? I'll just defer you if it is.
Do you, I mean, I've been preaching that for years, but I was wondering whether, like, the drive to have people develop out-of-tree modules for GNU Radio would maybe be one of the reasons that you don't get core developers. Because like people go and do their thing, and it's super hard as a developer to get insight if you change something in GNU Radio if you break out of tree modules, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Or the other way around. I mean, I could write my out of tree module. I add a feature, and like there could be 3 other out of tree modules that add the same feature because it doesn't go through like centralized review, right? So.
Yep. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry, no, yeah. So I'm going to defer most of the question to, I guess, more input for your panel question if you care about it. What I'll say is we've tried to structure GNU Radio to be a bazaar, but realistically, because of the barrier to entry, I'm not talking about users now, but the barrier to entry to become a developer, it's really more like a cathedral, and that's something that we don't want. So yeah, what you said is absolutely true. That's one of the things I'd like to talk about more at the panel for sure. Okay, do we have, I lost my phone. All right, one more short question. Anybody? Over there. Oh, Sylvain. Oh. You know what? Jonathan is going to talk about that tomorrow, and I'm going to let him take that shot.
And just for the recording, the question was, when is 3.8 coming out?
Yes, and I dodged it. All right, so with that, I am very happy to introduce Manuel the Director of Marketing at Edis Research.